Everybody wants something, right? They want to have something, have more money, have a better job. So they always ask, what do I need to do in order to have it? And he said, that's not the right question, because do is the second step. People say, what do I need to do in order to have? But there's a third process, and it's even deeper, and that is be, do, have. I'd already done the work to prepare myself so that I was ready when they asked me. We always talk about the door of opportunity, when opportunity knocks. Well, you have to be able to walk through the door. When the door opens, you have to be prepared to walk through the door. So I had prepared my life so when the door opened up, I was good enough at what I did to be able to be asked by guys like that to work with them.
What up, Masters? Welcome to another episode of Path to Mastery, episode, my friends, number 105 with Chris Widener. You're like, who's Chris Widener? You know the guy, Jim Rohn? You know who I've been posting, like literally Jim Rohn quotes on my Facebook and Instagram feed for like literally probably every other week for like 10 years. And not even just that, but Zig Ziglar, right? Zig Ziglar, like anytime anybody ever talks to me and they ask me like my favorite quote, I say, help enough people get what they want and you can have whatever you want. Well, Chris Widener is our guest, and Chris was the mentee to both of those guys. He spent tons of time with both Jim and Zig, and he shares some amazing stories about Jim and some of the experiences and what he learned from them. And also, he talks about how different the two of them are, but yet so successful at the highest level in that arena. It's an awesome interview. It's just great to get his perspective. The other thing too, he spent time with John Maxwell. So I mean, this guy, he's been around the who's who of personal development, and that's what this is all about, personal development. Anybody who listens to my podcast knows I am big into personal development. Those are my idols. I mean, gosh, I wish I had the opportunity to spend time with those guys when they were around. So anyway, this is a great interview, and you're going to hear some of Chris's perspectives and stories with Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar, as well as John Maxwell. So this is really, really cool. I'm super excited to share this with you. And Chris is a master as well at helping people achieve their goals. And he talks a lot about that. And here's the thing that I said. This interview, by the way, is from March 2017. So I'm a little behind on my interviews. However, one thing I said listening is, hey, I bet you that, you were pretty pumped when these guys called and said, hey, let's do some business together. And something that really stuck out to me, he said, the key though is it's not just that they called, it's that you're prepared, you're ready to receive the call. And I just thought that was an awesome perspective. Anyway, listen, you guys rock. This is a great interview. Talks about success, proximity to being near the right people, who you surround yourself, all the stuff we've talked about before. Anyway, again, my mentors, my idols, and you're going to hear about the legends, Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar, Chris Widener, and John Maxwell. I hope you super enjoy this interview, and please give us some feedback. Go to Google, go to iTunes, write a review. Please, it helps so much for us to continue getting really great guests and to continue to grow. So please, it's the oxygen for us. Listen, I just want to say, I appreciate you guys for listening, and you rock. Enjoy this awesome interview. This one was a treat. Hey Masters, welcome to another episode of Path to Mastery, where we go out and we find the best of the best that are going to give you one more tip, tool, strategy on your path to sales mastery. And listen, we went out and we found Chris Widener, who is just amazing. I didn't know this much about the guy. I knew he was connected with Jim Rohn, who you guys know is like my idol. I mean, if you follow me on Facebook or any other social media, I'm posting his stuff like every single day still. But also, Chris spent a lot of time with Zig Ziglar, who's another one of my, it's just amazing. So, hey, Chris, what's going on?
Just loving life and doing my thing, and proud to be able to be here with you. I appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, man, absolutely. So I'm a little bit about you. I mean, you've got 17 books, over 3 million copies sold. You actually co-wrote, I think it's Jim Rohn's last book, right? 12 Pillars.
Yeah.
You had a TV show with Zig Ziglar. I mean, man, I'm just jealous. How cool is all this stuff? Like, those are the two guys. Like, if I could spend time with anyone right now, it'd be Jim Rohn and Zig Ziglar, you know? So thanks for spending some time with us. And why don't you fill in a couple more of the gaps on, who you are and what you do?
Sure. Yeah. I grew up in the Seattle area, spent 50 years there. I just moved to Scottsdale, Arizona about 8 months ago and loving the sun every day. But I got into public speaking right out of college because I had a really crazy upbringing without taking too much time. Basically, my dad died when I was 4, shipped off to live with relatives twice, 28 homes, 11 different schools, started drugs in the 5th grade, made most of my money growing up betting the horses at Long Acres Horse Track up in south of Seattle, and really had a crazy upbringing. Got my life straightened together, my senior year of high school, figured it out, got into college and got a degree in youth and family work. And then I became a youth speaker, and then that eventually transitioned into adult speaking and connected with a lot of different people, built an email list in the late 90s of 100,000 people, started ghostwriting for guys like John Maxwell, and others. And then that's how I got tied into Jim Rohn and tied into Zig Ziglar and all that kind of stuff. But been a big personal development guy my whole life, and built a company in 2004 selling about 50,000 units a month through Costco and Sam's Club of personal development audio programs, and sold that in 2009. So speaker, author, entrepreneur.
Awesome, man. Yeah, you got some really good things going on. And it's interesting, too. I don't know if I didn't ask you this before. Do you know Don Hobbs?
The name sounds familiar. Yeah, actually, I do.
Yeah, he was one of the guys as well that was with Jim Rohn when, he was a lot younger. He remembered, I interviewed him and he talked to me about, at like a little retreat where it was Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, him, and like 4 or 5 other guys just listening to Jim. You know what I mean? Back before Jim was Jim Rohn. You know what I mean? And it's just interesting to see where all these guys that had that type of influence at a younger age have come with their lives. I mean, Don's
most people
massively
don't know that
successful.
Most people don't know that Jim gave Tony his first job when Tony was 17. He went to work for Jim selling Jim Rohn seminars, and that was his start. I only met Tony one time, and it was at Jim's memorial service where we both spoke at the memorial service in Anaheim.
So let's talk about that. I mean, let's talk about those influences. I mean, you shared some of your story. How did you get connected with Jim, and what did that do to you as far as like influence and helping you to achieve your goals and success in life?
Well, I was ghostwriting for a bunch of sort of mega stars on the circuit back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and Jim called me up and asked me if I would do some writing with them. So I ended up writing the Jim Rohn 1-year success program. And then from there, he and I wrote the book 12 Pillars together. So really, they were looking for somebody to do writing with them. And since I'd been doing it, I killed off all my ghostwriting jobs in 2002, 2003, and I just started doing work with people that at least I could get some credit. And it never hurts to have your name on a book with Jim Rohn, obviously. And so, my career jumped forward light years when I started working with Jim. And then, of course, when I started working with Zig. And so I've been very, very fortunate in some of the breaks that I've gotten in my career.
Yeah, absolutely. So like when, how important is it though? I mean, when you think about like, people that are listening to this podcast, obviously they're into personal development, they're into success, but think about the people we surround ourselves with, right? I mean, you think that comes into play, or you obviously got to spend time with Jim Rohn and Zig Ziglar. Is that part of the reason why you're successful? Or I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's twofold. Obviously, spending time with those guys was very important in my career and my own personal development. That being said, I'd already done the work to prepare myself so that I was ready when they asked me. There was something attractive about what I built that caused them to even ask me. So I wrote an article once, basically, we always talk about, the door of opportunity, when opportunity knocks. Well, you have to be able to walk through the door, right? When the door opens, you have to be prepared to walk through the door. So I had prepared my life so when the door opened up, I was good enough at what I did to be able to be asked by guys like that to work with them. And then, of course, they made me even better, and it helped my brand and all those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, I mean, you put yourself in a position with what you had already done so that people like that were seeking you out. I was going to say where the other side of the spectrum is, there's probably people out there, people listening that are maybe looking to seek out people like that and get around them so that they can be influenced, right, by those types of people.
Yeah, in fact, it's interesting. People will say, oh, how did you get your career? How did you end up working with John Maxwell and Zig Ziglar and Brian Tracy and Dennis Waitley and Jim Rohn? And I approach them completely opposite of the way most other people approach them. Most people, when they see somebody that is where they want to be in life, whether it's a speaker or some other business, they'll go to that person and say, I want to be just like you. Can you help me? And that's the wrong question. What I did was I said, I want to be just like you. How can I help you? And they all need help. They don't have time to go help a lot of other people, especially on a one-on-one basis. But they do need help. And if you have the skill set to be able to help them, it puts you into proximity, right? And so what happened was I started writing with Jim, and then Jim had a deal with Herbalife. They paid him $1 million a year, but he was exclusive in the network marketing industry. They took him off limits for any other network marketing company by paying him that huge salary. And so he couldn't go speak to other network marketing companies. Well, he's so big in network marketing that we were getting phone calls at Jim Rohn International all the time. We want Jim to come and speak. Well, he couldn't go and speak for these other network marketing companies. So instead, they sort of downsold him to me. Normally you get upsold, right? They downsold him to me and said, well, hey, but Jim's working with a guy. He's, one of the up and coming guys in the industry. You should really bring him in. By putting myself into proximity with Jim, by being willing to help him out with these writing projects, it ended up building my brand, making me much more famous, helping me to sell millions of more books and pick up a lot of speaking engagements in that industry that I would have never had before. I was completely a corporate speaker prior to meeting Jim Rohn. I was speaking at General Electric, Microsoft, Cisco Systems, Harvard Business School. And then when I hooked up with Jim, that opened up a whole new industry for me.
It's interesting, too, because most people, at least that are interested in personal development, know Jim Rohn, right? They know the name. I mean, everybody knows Tony Robbins' name for the most part. But what would you say, I mean, when you think about Jim Rohn, and I'm going to talk about you, too, because I know you got some great things going on. You're doing coaching and all that stuff. But what makes Jim Rohn Jim Rohn? Like, why was Jim Rohn so successful? Why did he have influence on so many people like that?
Well, his brand was America's business philosopher. There's a lot of people out there talking about actions. Here's what you need to do. And Jim talked about it at a deeper level. I always compare and contrast Zig and Jim, both guys that were amazing men, top of their industry, but they were very different individuals. Zig was a dynamic, he'd walk in a room and brighten the room and shake hands. And he was almost like a politician, shaking hands and kissing babies and slapping you on the back and telling a joke. Jim was very different. Jim was very professorial. He was almost like that college professor that walked you through the classics, in book discussions in the classics. I think part of what set him apart was that there are very few people that are talking at that deeper level. Zig always said that everybody wants to know that everybody wants something, right? They want to have something, have more money, have a better job. So they always ask, what do I need to do in order to have it? And he said, that's not the right question, because do is the second step. People say, what do I need to do in order to have? But there's a third process, and it's even deeper, and that is be, do, have. And so who you are, and that's what Jim and Zig both talked about, albeit in different styles. But Jim talked about the being. He talked about the philosophy that underlied the actions and things like that. And I think that his depth was really his unique selling proposition, to use a marketing term.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, a master philosopher, and amazing at telling stories as well. But like you said, his stories were different. I mean, Zig was probably the master at the story. I mean, I remember listening to him where he'll have a story going for 45 minutes. And on one of his audio CDs. I mean, the guy was just brilliant with that. I don't know if
there was some research done, and it was in the speaking industry, and they wanted to see if there was a direct correlation to how much of your keynote speech was stories and how much you got paid for your speeches. And Zig was the number one paid speaker at the time, making $100,000 a speech. And I think they said it was something like 82% of his entire speech was stories, with just brief little teaching segues in between the stories. And Jim was much the same way, in that he told stories, and he told a lot of, in fact, both of them told a lot of biblical stories. How many times have we heard Jim say, from the Bible? In fact, it's the Bible verse that I read at Jim's memorial, the parable of the sower. There was a farmer, and he went out and he threw the seeds on the ground, and some landed on the rocky soil and some landed on the path. And those stories teach lessons. And so both of those guys were masterful storytellers.
Yeah, absolutely. And you did mention too, I'm just curious, like you said, they're both so different. I mean, different in philosophies. What other ways are they different?
Well, I wouldn't say different in philosophies. I would say different in styles and then different in personalities. Jim was a very quiet guy. He would be in his hotel room till it was time for him to come to speak. He'd come down the elevator. He'd walk into the room. He'd give his speech. He'd walk back to the elevator and up to the hotel room again. He was more of an introvert.
Got it.
Zig was an extrovert. Zig loved to glad hand people. He loved to be out there grinning and gripping and talking and shaking hands and all that kind of thing. And Zig was loud and boisterous and moved all over the stage. And, he did that pump thing with the water pump, and then he'd get down on his knees at the front of the stage and, all those kinds of things. And Jim was, he stood behind the podium. Every once in a while, he'd get really crazy and step out from behind the podium and take his glasses off. But other than that, they were just very different styles, and yet they were the two greatest speakers of their generation.
Yeah, I agree with you. I would say, honestly, I can't even think of any. Well, I mean, John Maxwell is a phenomenal speaker as well, obviously, and you got to spend time with John. I'd like to know, like, you spent time with Jim Rohn. What did you learn? Like, what would be the biggest thing or the one thing you learned from Jim Rohn that's helped you in your life?
I would say be yourself. It wasn't necessarily what he taught, but it was looking at his life, and because everybody else was this dynamic, prance around the stage, bang your chest, walk over coals kind of person, and Jim was not. He was the anti-motivational speaker, and yet it worked for him, and it made him a legend. The National Speakers Association gave him the Masters of Influence Award, and I was there with him when he got it. The person who gave him the award, Mark Sanborn, gave him the award and asked the audience of, 3,000 speakers, how many of you would say that Jim Rohn directly influenced your life and your speaking career? And 2/3 of the audience raised their hand. So it wasn't just the people that Jim touched, it was the people he touched that went out and touched millions of other people. And so be yourself. You don't have to be somebody else. You don't have to fit in with the crowd. And there's an old quote, be a voice, not an echo. And I think that that's a great lesson from the life of Jim Rohn. He was who he was.
I love the lesson, too, in the fact that they're both so different, right? But yet both so effective and high level at achieving pretty much the same thing, right? But in completely different ways, right?
And they were very good friends and had a lot of mutual respect for each other.
But I just want to make that point for our listeners, where some people, they put limits on what they can achieve. That guy's really social, so he's going to be a better salesperson than I am. And that's not really what it's about.
No, not at all. In fact, when I graduated from college, I served on a board of a nonprofit out in New Jersey, a very wealthy area of New Jersey. And I was on the board sort of as the youth advocate of this nonprofit. And I was on the board with some of the biggest businessmen in the country. My first business mentor was the CEO of Mars Candies. And, there was the former CEO of Sealand Corporation and a former NFL quarterback. And, you name it, they were who's who on this board. And then there was little old me at 22 years old, sort of representing the voice of the kids. And the first thing I noticed was that all of these men were quiet. There wasn't a gregarious, loud, boisterous one of all of them. And I thought that was really interesting to me, because I always thought leaders were these dynamic, loud, forceful, and all of these men who combined net worth of probably $500 to $1 billion between, 5 or 6 of them, they were all strong, quiet types. I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to ask you the same question now with relation to Zig. Like, spending time with Zig, you had a TV show with the guy. What would you say is the one thing that you learned from Zig Ziglar?
I would say that Zig was the kindest man I ever met. He was the epitome of integrity. He grew not only an amazing business, but had an amazing family life. Till the day he died, he was married to the redhead all those years, and his son Tom and his brothers and sisters continue his legacy on today. A lot of people can go out and build a big business. There's less people that can go out and build a big business and help their family become great as well.
Yeah, so true. I always remember, I don't know where I heard it, but whenever Zig met kids, he'd always talk to the kids about their goals. You know what I mean? Ask them, what's your goal? And I just think that's so cool. And that's inspired me to always do that myself, when I meet kids. I want to talk to them about goals. I mean, I don't know. At least that's what I heard. I'm hoping it's true.
Yeah, he was always talking to kids about setting their goals and making sure they had a direction in life.
So I think that's really cool. Focus on our youth. And then John Maxwell, same question. And I want to jump into some of the things that you're doing today and that we really can help our listeners.
Sure. So many things I learned from John. Probably the greatest thing was that John puts amazing teams together. I worked with them in the early 2000s, late 1990s, early 2000s, and all across the board, he had amazing leaders that he had hired. I can't remember which law it is in 21 Irrefutable Laws, but he talks about your company can only go past the highest level of your best employee.
Is it the law of the lid?
It might be the law of the lid. But basically he's saying if you hire a bunch of 6s, your business is only going to be a 6.
Yes.
If you hire a bunch of 9s, your business is going to be a 9. And he was really great at putting great people around him who have stayed with him for decades.
What up, Masters? I'm going to get you right back to the show. I want to share a couple opportunities with you. First off, my new training program I'm super pumped about. People have been asking me for years, guys. It's School for Realtors. It's an expired training. I'm giving you everything, my friends, every single thing that you're going to need to convert expired sellers in this competitive time. All right, I have every single script you're going to need. From the initial conversation, how to keep people from hanging up on you, to the closing script, right? We're giving you a copy of our pre-listing packet. I'm giving you emails that you can literally copy and paste templates. I'm giving you a 65-day email campaign, guys, that you literally copy and paste. Expired flyers, okay, 2 different marketing pieces. And we're giving you actual ads that you can use on Facebook. Guys, these are targeted ads that I've been using on Facebook where I'm generating people calling me and saying, hey, I see you guys everywhere. Yeah, why don't you come over and take a look at my house? So I'm giving you everything. This is called Expired School for Realtors. Simply go to schoolforrealtors.com. Costs you $149. I wanted to make this such a no-brainer because it's going to be the best investment you will ever make in your real estate business for $149. And here's a better thing. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee. So at the end, if you said, you know what, Dave, I just didn't get value in your expired training, then I'm going to give you your $149 back, and you still have all my materials. So how's that work, right? You can't go wrong. Listen, everything is here, everything you need. And here's the last thing. We have a monthly call. You're part of an awesome community where everybody in the community has the same goals, okay? You're sharing things that work with each other. And I am logging in monthly and doing a live training for everybody. You have role play partners. Listen, this is everything you need. It's so simple. You go to schoolforrealtors.com, you get to download, and then you just start downloading. And I even made it step by step by step. All right, that said, awesome opportunity for you. And then finally, and we're going to get you back to the show, I promise. If you love audiobooks or if you love podcasts, you need to check out Audible. Audible.com is Amazon's audiobook site. You can get yourself a copy of Crushing It or any book you want. I would encourage Crushing It for free by going to davidsfreebook.com. Again, davidsfreebook.com. Get yourself a free copy of any audiobook you want on Audible. Yes, they're going to ask you for a credit card, but here's what you're going to do. As long as you cancel within 30 days, your credit card will never be billed. So schedule a reminder in your calendar 25 days out. And if for some reason you don't love the service, then you cancel and your card's never, ever charged. And you get to keep the book. Guys, listen, these are opportunities. How do you go wrong with either of these opportunities? Okay, listen, you rock. I just want to share that with you. So a couple opportunities. Schoolforrealtors.com and davidsfreebook.com. Enjoy the rest of the show. All right, so let's talk about you. You do coaching. You've got a business. Talk to us about your business and what you can do to help some of our listeners out there.
Yeah, sure. I do CEO coaching, sales coaching, life coaching. I never take more than about 10 clients. I have 6 right now, so I do have 4 slots left through the end of the year. They're typically 6 months or a year, but right now I would just fill them out through the end of the year. What we do is, since I don't have 100 clients, it's not a cookie-cutter approach. What I do is I sit down with them. They fill out a confidential personal profile that lets me know everything about their life and who they are and where they came from. And then we establish their goals that they want to accomplish in the time frame that we have to meet. And then we're on the phone together, and I'm having them read books that are pertinent to what it is that they want to accomplish. And I have a lot of clients that stay with me for years, and clients that are seeing their income grow by 50%, and expanding their businesses, people who want to write books. I've written 17 books, so I help people who want to get their speaking careers going and their books written and all those kinds of things. And I've coached hundreds and hundreds of people, everybody from CEOs of large corporations to mom and pop store owners to top salespeople. Right now I've got some financial planners, and I've got one guy that does about $2 billion a year in loan processing, and just a whole bunch of different kinds of people. I got a guy that runs a big gravel operation out of Jackson, Mississippi, and, a wide variety of people that just help them accomplish the goals that they want in business and in life.
So coaching with you, I mean, what does that look like? I mean, we have, I'm sure everybody listening to this has at least heard of coaching, but what does ultimately coaching do for somebody when they get into coaching with you, with anybody, I guess, for that matter?
Coaching is about a few things. It's about accountability, knowing that you're going to have a phone call with your coach and they're going to say, did you do this? It's about having a second set of eyes on your problems, where you come and you say, hey, this is what's happening. I got one of my clients right now. He's a younger guy, and I'm 50. I think he's 37, wildly successful, though. And he'll say, here's my dilemma. What should I do? And I'm like, you already know what to do, right? And he says, yeah, because sometimes you just need somebody to kick you in the butt and go, the answer's right there. Or, sometimes they really don't know. And I help people figure those kinds of things out. I've worked with a lot of people over the years who are in businesses that were started by their grandpa, and then their dad ran it, and now they're taking it over. They not only have the business problems, they have the family problems, right? Family-owned businesses, multi-generational family-owned businesses have their own issues. So sometimes it's not about firing a bad employee. It's about firing your uncle. And that can get really tough at Thanksgiving time when you got to sit across the table from your uncle or your brother or your cousin, whoever. So it's really about having a respected confidant on your side. I have no ownership of it. It doesn't matter to me. I don't make more money if you do a certain thing over another thing. It's just raw advice from a history of 30 years of being in business and working with some of the top minds and business people in the world. So when people coach with me, that's what they get. They get access to somebody. It's 2 phone calls a month. We do 2 one-hour phone calls a month. And then we do what I do, what very few coaches do. It's called anytime coaching. They can call me anytime they want for quicker coaching sessions, So I'll regularly get calls from my coaching clients in between our regularly scheduled calls, and they'll say, hey, do you got a few minutes? Yeah. Well, I'm just about to go in this meeting, and here's what's going on. What do you think I ought to do? And so that's all included in it as well. And if anybody's interested, they can go to chriswidener.com. That's WIDENER.com, chriswidener.com/private-coaching. There's a little form that you fill out there, and then I'll give you a call, and we can set it up if you're interested, find out if we're a good fit. If I'm not a good fit for somebody, I will tell them and recommend them to a different coach. If they're not a good fit for me, I'll just, tell them that as well, because you're going to invest, thousands of dollars in it, and I want to make sure that everybody's happy.
Got it. So I want to make mention too, when you talked about, it sounds like you're a business coach, right? So a lot of our listeners are real estate agents, and for you real estate agents that are listening, to be successful in real estate with what's going on, the changes, we need to start thinking like business owners. And I think probably about 20% of our industry really does that, thinks of themselves more as a business owner than just a real estate agent. And there's a huge, huge difference right there, right? In the way we conduct ourselves.
I just had a client last year. He was with me for all of 2016, and he owns a real estate agency. We took him from, 14 agents to 24 agents. He had brought on 10 more agents, moved into a new office, increased his income by 45% year over year, 2016 over 2015. And so you really are a business owner. You're probably a 1099, I'm assuming, with your agency. So if you're a broker, which is what this guy was, owned his own real estate agency, or you're an agent. If you're a broker, you own the agency. If you're an agent, you own your life, you own your business. You get to make your own decisions about how you're going to run that business, and you should run it like a business owner.
Yeah, I think the challenge, Chris, is a lot of real estate agents, they don't run it like a business. They run it like it's a job, and instead of thinking about, hiring talent. And, one of the big differences is with a business, I can go on vacation, and I can do things, and business is still happening, right? But if I have a job, if I leave, then nothing's going on, and everything can fall apart.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's talk about coachability. I know this one comes up a lot. What would you say, because you said earlier to see if we're a good fit, What would make someone a good fit? Or maybe a better question is, what would make somebody coachable? What would you see as a coachable person?
Well, they have to have self-awareness. They have to be willing to listen. They have to be willing to act. I'm surprised. I haven't had too many of these people, but I'm surprised that when somebody will pay me, $4,000 or $5,000 for my advice, and then, we'll be on the calls, and then we'll be talking, and I'll say, this is what you should really go do, and then they just don't do it. In fact, I saw a funny meme on the internet the other day. It had the definition of an ask hole, ASKHOLE. An ask hole is somebody who's always asking you for advice and then never does it. And so really, you have to come with an open mind. You have to be willing to be coachable and listen. You have to have self-awareness to know what your strengths and weaknesses are, and invest in yourself and really go out and do it.
What would you say, Chris, gets in the way, though? Like, somebody's paying you good money for advice, and then they go off and they don't take action. Why do you think that is?
Well, there's a wide variety of things based on their own personal profile. I had a woman who worked for a guy who owned a company. The guy was about 70. She was about 50. He owned the company lock, stock, and barrel. She was the president of the company. She had 100 employees. She came to me first or second call, and she said, I want to talk to you about something. And I said, okay, what is it? She said, well, whenever the owner of the company gets upset about something, I avoid him. I go to my office. I don't answer his phone calls. I don't answer his emails. I just avoid him. What should I do? And I said, did you read the confidential personal profile that you filled out and sent to me before we got started? And she said, read it. I wrote it. And I said, so you don't remember telling me that when you were a little girl, your dad would scream and yell and you'd run up and crawl underneath your bed and hide from him? And it was like the light bulb went off. She even told me the story, but she never made that connection that she's doing the exact same thing, although in a more professional manner, with this older man, probably about her dad's age, who, when he got mad at her, she didn't run and hide under her bed like a little girl. She ran and hid behind her desk like a grown woman who's running a 100-person company. And it was affecting her. And so I said, the first thing you probably should do is go get some counseling. Go get some counseling and deal with that issue, because it's affecting your ability to partner with the man who's hired you, the owner of the company, and effectively lead your people in your company.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I think that's pretty common. I think a lot of us do carry those things with us. And I think
Absolutely.
You mentioned the awareness is the key. After once we become aware of it, then we can fix it, right? What would you say has been the biggest challenge? Like, why don't more people get into coaching?
The number one thing is they don't want to spend the money. I mean, with my coaching, it's $4,000 to $6,000, depends on how long you do it, for 2 calls a month for up to a year. And they look at it as, $4,000 to $6,000. But I mean, I've saved my people millions and millions of dollars, let alone the ones who are in businesses that I connected them to other people who they ended up doing millions of dollars worth of business with those other people. Helping them get their books written, helping them become speakers, helping them to double their income, all these kinds of things. And so what happens is pride gets in the way and fear gets in the way, and they end up tripping over nickels, getting to dollars. It's like when I was first in the speaking business doing sales training, and I was charging $10,000 for a speech at the time, and people like, $10,000 to talk for an hour? And I'd say, well, how many salespeople do you have? 100. How many sales do they do a year? 50 each. Okay. What's the average price of your sale? $10,000. Okay. So what if I give them some tips and tricks? So those 100 salespeople do 55, and each one of them does 5 extra sales a year. Well, 5 extra sales a year is 500 sales at $5,000 a piece. And I think that's $2.5 million if I do my math right. Is that worth it to you to pay $10,000 for? And then they go, oh, okay, I get it. Is it worth investing in a coach $4,000 to $5,000 to $6,000? There's some coaches charge $7,000, $8,000, $10,000 a year, but it's what you get back from them in the personal development, the business development, the relationship growth, all those kinds of things, and then of course your bottom line.
Yeah, well, is it worth investing in yourself? I guess is the real question, right? I know for me, I've had a coach since 2010, and many times I've had 2 coaches. So I think it's extremely important. It's helped me to overcome a lot of obstacles, and like you talked about earlier, see some of those things that I wouldn't have seen without somebody else pointing me in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what didn't I ask you, man? Anything that I should have asked you that I didn't?
Just some current projects I'm working on. We talked a lot about Jim Rohn. I had a TV show in Dallas aside from the one I had with Zig. And it ends up, I had Jim Rohn on the TV show, and we didn't know it at the time, but it ended up being the last videotaped interview that Jim Rohn ever gave. And so if any of your listeners are interested in watching and or listening, because we give it to them for free. We give them a download of the video and a download of the audio, as well as a mastermind document to walk them through that interview. They can go over to jimslastwords.com, jimslastwords.com, and that will take them, all they have to do is give your email address and name, and we'll email you the download link, and you can download the video and the audio and the mastermind document and really spend, my TV show was 58 minutes long, so you get to spend 58 minutes with one of the greatest thinkers of our time who had an effect on, by himself, tens of millions of people, and through all the others who quote him and pass along his material, hundreds of millions, if not billions of people.
My favorite, I'll share my two favorite quotes. One was from Zig: help enough people get what they want, and you end up with whatever you want, right? That's one of Zig's famous ones. And then with Jim Rohn is don't wish it were easier, wish you were better. I absolutely love those, and I post them. Do you have any favorites yourself?
Yeah, that quote of Zig's, you can have anything you want in life if you just help enough other people get what they want out of life. That's my favorite quote of his. And then I suppose if I was going to talk about Jim Rohn, my favorite Jim Rohn quote, it would have to be, everyone must experience one of two pains, either the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. You have to make those choices.
I love that one. Tell us about that. The pain of discipline or the pain of regret. Break that down.
Well, if you think about it, if you discipline yourself, then you won't have regret because you'll get better and you'll go on to have the life that you want to have. But it's painful. Discipline is pain. When you want to buy that new set of golf clubs, I want it so bad. It's discipline. It's painful. When you want to go on that vacation, but you don't have the money, if you're a female, you want to buy that bag for $1,500, that Louis Vuitton, but you got to save that money. If you want to lose weight, you got to go to the gym. If you're unwilling to discipline yourself, then a year later, 5 years later, 10 years later, you have regret. And that's a deeper pain. In fact, the follow-up to that, he said, everyone must experience one of two pains, pain of discipline or pain of regret. The pain of discipline weighs ounces. The pain of regret weighs pounds, was how he finished that off.
I love that. So first off, how do we get in touch with you, Chris?
You can find me all over social media. Instagram and Facebook is both at Chris Widener Speaker. Twitter is at Chris Widener. My website is chriswidener.com. And again, if you want private coaching, it's chriswidener.com/private-coaching. And then, of course, you can jump on over and pick up the last Jim Rohn interview at jimslastwords.com.
Love it. And what would be, if everybody was going to pick up just one single book, Chris, what would be your book recommendation?
Well, my best-selling book is called 12 Pillars. It's what I wrote with Jim, but I also like my book, The Angel Inside, which is my favorite book that I've written. And then, of course, Art of Influence is what I speak all over the world on.
All right, got it. So it's basically you're saying you can't just pick up one book; you need to pick up multiple books, right?
I can't. Look, I've written 17, and of course, if there's anybody that's in network marketing, I know some of the agents and others are probably involved in network marketing as well. My business partner and I just came out with a new book called The 7 Laws of Network Marketing, and that should be out very soon on Amazon and the like.
Love it. So for all you podcast listeners, you can go to audible.com, get yourself a free copy of probably any of those books by just going to davidsfreebook.com, and you can get yourself a free copy, absolutely free, davidsfreebook.com. So final question for you, Chris, and we really appreciate your time. What is the one thing you want our listeners to take from this interview on their path to mastery?
My favorite book of all time of personal development books, most people say, Richest Man in Babylon or Think and Grow Rich. My favorite book of all time was a book by David Schwartz, Dr. David Schwartz, called The Magic of Thinking Big. And I always tell people it's just as easy to think big as it is to think small. And I learned that lesson when I came up with a concept to put together other people's personal development programs. And I licensed a bunch of audio programs from some of the megastars, but then just a lot of speakers that had great content. And I only made one sales call to sell that product, and it was to Costco. Costco picked it up, and then, of course, Sam's Club wanted it. So we ended up, we were selling 50,000 units a month through Costco and Sam's Club. I didn't call Joe's Five and Dime and ask him to take it on consignment. I decided to go big. And so, the old saying, go big or go home. If you're going to be a waitress, why work at Denny's? Why not work at some fancy steak joint? And 20% of a $400 bill is a lot more than 20% of a $15 bill. If you're going to be an agent, a real estate agent, why not sell $1 million home instead of a $100,000 home, or whatever? It's just as easy to think big as it is to think small.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because right now my job is looking for talent for my teams, and I started calling lists of agents, and what I'd realized was I made a mistake. Was I started calling at the bottom of the list, and then I switched that around, and now I call at the top of the list, meaning the highest producers are who I'm calling first. It's just what you said. So everybody listening to this, forget about that $100,000 listing. Go focus on the $1 million listings. And Chris, hey man, we really appreciate your time. And if you guys are interested, you know how to get in touch with Chris, and he'll help you get to that $1 million listing.
Thank you, sir.
Masters, if you know me, you know health and nutrition is number one, and that's why I'm an advisor for Advocare products. Listen, in my opinion, these are the best products on the planet, guys. You get what you're supposed to get, right? I use the products for health. I use the products for energy. I use the products for wellness. So we have all the different lines from Spark, starting your day with a great energy shot, all the way to pre-workout. It's whatever your goals are, right? It's whatever your goals are. You can check out the products at www.livelongersmarter.com. That's my website. Or reach out to me, and I'd love to have a 30-minute or, anywhere from 15 to 30-minute conversation with you, just talking about your health and nutrition goals and what I can do to help you achieve those goals. So again, products, energy line, or wellness line, whether it's joints, you're getting up there in the age, you just want to take care of yourself. I'll tell you, one of the greatest compliments I get is people, you say, wow, you look amazing. I cannot believe you are the age you are. Weight loss. I've helped lots of people, guys, lose weight, not just lose it, but keep it off with the products. And the cool thing is, I'd say 75% of the people who start with our products, they continue using our products even after they initially tried them, which has been amazing. And strength, if you're into bodybuilding, then hey, Rich Fronin, okay? I don't know if you know who Rich Fronin is. He's an advocate for Advocare as well. So amazing products. You can see us. We're featured on NASCAR, professional soccer, college basketball, college football, Men's Health magazine last month. These are the real deal, guys. LiveLongerSmarter.com is the website, or reach out to me if you, like I said, if you want to have a personal conversation with me, just send me an email. In the subject line, just put Advocare products, and I'd love, like I said, schedule a 15 to 30-minute call with you to talk about your health and nutrition goals. Guys, you rock. Live longer, smarter. And as Gary Keller eloquently said, if you don't take care of your body, where are you gonna live? You rock.
You are listening to One More Sale with your host, David I. Hill, author of the Sales Playbook. Get your copy at www.thesalesplaybook.net.